In this video, we're going to talk about setting up DSIP router to support dynamic credentials. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that you need to understand is that you won't see anything in the UI that talks about dynamic credentials. These are things that are implemented in our API. At some point, we may decide to add this functionality to the UI to give more visibility, but we are looking for feedback on this. So if you have any suggestions, please comment below. So let's go ahead and get started. So what you'll see here is that I'm logged into DSIP router from the terminal perspective. And then I'm also using Postman to show our API. So if you um, have, have looked at our documentation for DSub router, we have a link to our Postman. I'll also put that link in the description below. But what you'll see underneath leases, which is one of the endpoints that we support in the API, is that we have a endpoint for setting up a lease in a username password format or supporting IP-based leases. So just to step back for a second, a lease is simply what it sounds like. Is basically you make a request for a set of credentials. Those set of credentials are only available for a period of time. We call that period of time TTL or time to live. There's two types of leases. There's a lease that actually provides you a username and password that allows you to register to DSub router for a period of time, or there's an IP based, which allows you to specify what IP that you're going to allow traffic to come from for a period of time. And we also do support not just a single IP, but also a subnet as well. And then the last API here is the revocation or the revocation um, API. This allows you to revoke a particular lease if some type of break glass event happens where you need to immediately shut this particular lease down. So, real quickly before we get started, I'm going to show you this through Postman, and I'm actually going to show you the Slack integration that you can do, right? So with Postman, obviously the whole goal here is to show you how you can exercise the API. The API can be embedded in maybe if you have a Jenkins pipeline or some CI/CD pipeline where you need to be able to generate some dynamic credentials and then provide those dynamic credentials to whatever application that you're deploying. Or if you're using Slack, maybe you need to give somebody some credentials really quickly because maybe they're testing the system, and instead of going out and and going to your provider and creating some SIP credentials from them, you can actually use DSIP router as a broker, and DSIP router would have all of your carrier information defined, and then all you'll need to do is say, hey, give me some credentials, and those credentials will then be available for a period of time. They'll be able to register and make outbound calls, and then once the time to live has expired, that those set of credentials will no longer be good, right? Um, so let's go ahead and get started so you can kind of see how this all works. So what you see on the left is you see DSIP router. I'm going to log into the database that maintains this data here, so we can kind of see what happens behind the scenes. So there's two tables. Really, there's three tables, but for right now, we're going to do a username and password authentication. So the two tables that are important here is going to be uh, dsip underscore endpoint lease, which right now is empty. This is maintains all of the leases, the expiration date for those leases, And then for a username and password um, type of lease, you also have the subscriber table, which is empty right now as well. But the subscriber table is part of Camellia, which is used to you know to define a set of credentials that allows a user agent to be able to register. And so what we do is really manipulate that subscriber table, and we use the DSIP underscore endpoint lease table just to manage all of the leases. So let's go ahead and get started here. So the first one here is you'll see is actually let's use this one here. Let's use a username and password here. And so you'll see here in the endpoint is it's going to be V1 lease endpoint. We're going to specify email address, and we call the email address going to be any unique identifier that you want to use for understanding who has these credentials. The thought process initially was that you will be able to grab the person's email, and then you can send them an email before those credentials are about to expire. That way, they have the ability to kind of wrap up what they're doing. And then the time to live is 2 minutes. The M is important. Right now, we only do support minutes, but down the road, we wanted to be able to support different different units of measure around time, right? So right now we'll leave it at 1 minute because we want to be able to show this expiring within one minute. So let's go ahead and send these credentials. Now, how this is being sent is you need an API key in order to send it. So let's go ahead and send it. And what you'll see here is you get the result. You have the domain in which these calls, uh, or the domain in which this particular set of credentials is assigned to. Now you can have different domains. Out of our implementation, our current implementation, you only can have one domain. So you can actually change just the domain to whatever you want it to be. It could be the name of your server if you want it to be. It could be some arbitrary domain if you want it to be. Uh, the next thing here, you have the lease ID. So this is the associated ID or the unique identifier for this particular lease. Likewise, if you needed to revoke this lease, you would be using this lease ID. Then you have the password for the SIP credential. You have the TTL, so how long this is going to stay alive, and then you're going to have the username, in this case, lease 98. So let's go and look at these before it expires. You can see here is that you can see that the subscriber table has all the lease information we just saw. And then I'm going to look at the DSIP endpoint lease. And this right here, this kind of explain this here. This is the lease ID that we saw here. It's 37 there. The gateway ID that's associated with this, I'll come back to that in a second. And then you have the subscriber ID. That's what the SID is. That's 51. And that matches the subscriber ID in this table, 51. So those kind of links these two together. And the gateway ID is just a way to specify what gateway this is associated with for doing routing inside of DSIP router. So as you can tell here, is that there was 1 minute, so that lease expired already, right? So likewise, if I go back to subscriber, that's been cleaned up as well. So there's a process that is running all the time that is cleaning up these leases and making sure the expiration dates are expired or adhered to. Sorry, so now that we did a username password lease, let's go ahead and do a IP lease. Okay, so let's go take a look at this. So this is the same endpoint, lease endpoint. The email address, again, TTL 1 minute, but you'll notice that now we have a type. So we say type is equal to IP, and then we specify an off IP parameter. So this is the IP address that we want to be able to allow um, to allow calls from for a period of time. In this case, 1 minute. So let's go ahead and invoke that. So what you're going to see here is that here goes the first parameter is allowed IP. So this is the IP that's allowed. So you see the domain again, the lease ID, and the TTL. So let's go look at our subscriber table again, or let's look at our endpoint table. So in this case, there's lease ID is 38, again, matches our lease ID and our payload here. You'll see the gateway ID and the subscriber ID are empty because it doesn't really make sense, right? Because we don't need any type of username and password for this type of lease. But the address ID is 106. So there's also another table called address. And this table specifies, who can send traffic to DSIP routers. So think of it as a ACL, right? For traffic coming inbound into DSIP router. So you can notice that it's 106. If we go back and we look at our endpoint, the endpoint already clinked up, so it's already gone. But you saw it. If I go back up here, you will see it was 106 here. So you can see it was 106. Okay, so now you've seen how you can do dynamic SIP credentials. You see the actual credentials actually being clinked up. So the next thing I want to show you is how you can do this from Slack. Okay, because I think this becomes very interesting when you need to be able to, especially if you're in an organization like mine, where we're doing a lot of support and we're setting up new instances of SIP servers. It's sometimes it's sometimes much easier for us to give a support engineer some temporary credentials, and it's safer, obviously, to be honest. It's much safer to give them some dynamic credentials that they can use to do some testing on a decent router instance, for example, for a period of time, and then those credentials expire. So of course they could go call the API, but in a lot of cases, we're just trying to make the job a lot easier for them. So in order to do that, we're going to show you how to do this from Slack. So I'm in Slack. If I just use the lease slash command without no TTL, it's going to have a 5-minute TTL. All right. So if I just do lease, it's going to show me what it looks like here. So if I look at this, I have same stuff: domain, the release ID, the password, and then the username, right? So I can just copy and paste these into into a SIP phone or some SIP device, and I can be able to uh, you know register that. You'll notice if I go back to this here and I do DSIP endpoint lease, it's you can see that the DSIP endpoint lease is actually showing up like before, right? And then you're also going to see that in the subscriber table is also here as well. Now, since I didn't give it any particular um, TTL time, it made it 5 minutes. So this is going to take a long time for it to expire. So this is a great opportunity to show you what does it look like to revoke a lease. So I'm going to go to the revoke lease here. And what you need to do is just specify same endpoint, lease endpoint, I can give it the lease ID, which in this case, the lease ID is 39, right? And then I can say send, and then that's going to revoke the lease as it said there. So now if we go back and look at our subscriber table, it's not there. You do look at your DSub lease endpoint, it's not there as well. One more thing I'll show here. If I do a lease and I give it a TTL of 1 minute, I give it the type of IP, and I'm just going to make up an IP here. This is going to just show you how you can create leases that are based on IP ranges, right? So, and if I'm just going to give it a /24 here. I just made this IP up here. Okay. So, as you can see here, it came back as the allowed IP here. So I can actually now start sending calls from that IP range there. Just for completeness, you can see that the lease is there, and then also I can look at the address table because it's going to be something that gets inserted into the address table. So you can see that. So here goes the IP. And here goes the actual subnet, which is the 24. Okay. So, so this is really what I wanted to show. I really wanted to show how easy it is to leverage the lease endpoint, which is really AKA dynamic SIP credentials. Is kind of how we market this feature. I really want you to take some time and think about how you can leverage this particular feature. Give us some feedback. Try and set it up. This is actually a feature that requires a core subscription key. So go out to dopensource/shop, and you can purchase a core subscription license. Put it into DSub router. There's if I'll show you just where it is. There's actually a license manager inside a DSub router. Oops, I gotta log back in. There's a license manager in DSub router that allows you to put that license key in, and then from there, all of those features that I just talked about will work. All right. If this content provided value to you, please click the like button and then also subscribe to our channel. All right. Talk to you soon.